Yes, we're together. We've been together for months, and I want to leave him, but I can't because I'm pregnant.
South Park doesn't just mock in this episode. It takes a scalpel and carefully dissects the myth of power. The new episode turns the entire political entourage into a strange theater of the absurd, where paranoia, petty intrigues, and vile tricks serve as the stage. Satan's pregnancy by Trump is not just a shock tactic. It is a multi-layered metaphor through which the show demonstrates how one mistake, one grotesque act, can set off a chain of consequences that is impossible to control. The birth of a demonic baby from the ass is an image that is both funny and repulsive, but it is precisely in this contrast that the power of the message lies. Each of Trump's plans in the episode seems less and less thought out and more panicked. Instead of rational calculation, there are impulses. Instead of responsibility, there are attempts to cover up the traces. And into this vacuum of powerlessness, someone inevitably flies, and who finds themselves in the line of fire. Most often Brandon Carr. His character seems to have been created to demonstrate the price that allies pay. Falls, injuries, public humiliation. The scenes with people sliding down the stairs and bones crunching turn into a nasty farce, but they also remind us of a real strategy, when the boss simply shifts the risk onto those around him. It is the scene with the greasy staircase that is the quintessence of show humor and political symbolism. It seems like a silly joke, to trip up the poor guy to solve the problem. In reality, it is a picture of destruction. The only one who falls is Carr, and this fall turns out to be painful not only physically, but also politically. The fall becomes iconic. Trump's plan, built on cunning and petty mischief, breaks not his opponents, but his own people. It is a metaphor for how inept management turns support into sacrifice. No less vile is the soup scene, a special broth designed to incapacitate a troublesome person becomes an instrument of revenge. South Park turns real political practice into comedic grotesquerie with its despicable tricks. And in this grotesquerie lies tragedy. Carr, who eats the trapped soup, immediately finds himself in a pitiful state, and the viewer is forced to laugh and feel a slight disgust at the same time. Such hyperbole emphasizes that power deprived of morality resorts to cheap tricks, and people suffer as a result. The episode titled Conflict of Interest is designed not for laughs, but for exposure. Satan here is not just a monster, but a mirror for the system. What was hidden under beautiful slogans suddenly crawls out. Trump tries to hide the problem, suppress it, silence it, but the more furiously he digs the hole, the deeper he buries himself. The symbolic child is something that cannot be removed by attacking people or putting illegal pressure on the media. The problem arises, multiplies, and demands responsibility, not staging. The real events to which the series refers make it even more poignant. Attempts to pressure TV channels and remove presenters for jokes did not go unnoticed in real life, and instead of silence, these attempts only brought noise and attention. Kimmel, whom they wanted to cut off from the airwaves, saw explosive ratings. The attack on laughter backfired. South Park masterfully turns this effect back into satire. The harder the authorities try to stifle laughter, the louder it becomes, and the more comical the confusion of those who try to control it looks. An important layer of the series is the exposure of hypocrisy surrounding freedom of speech. Trump, who proclaimed himself a defender of the First Amendment, is shown differently here. Instead of defending it, he uses resources to punish those who laugh. This is not just a skit. It is a statement that freedom has become a brand that can be turned on and off at will. South Park strikes at this very duality. Laughter remains the last armor against tyranny, and by showing how politics tries to stifle it, the series reminds us of the value of public irony. Another clever detail is the relationships between the characters. Not just images, but a pool of connections that are torn apart by the onslaught of madness. Satan here is not just a mythical monster. She is a mirror that reflects not only Trump, but the entire system that allowed this farce to arise. Brandon Carr remains a figure who bears the brunt of the consequences, but he also symbolizes those who lose their own identity by compromising. That is why the final frames of the series leave a feeling of bitter irony, laughter still, and a slight sense of unease. One of the most memorable lines is the transformation of Trump's entourage's reaction from passive agreement to nervous participation in the farce. At first, it seems like the usual yes, we'll do as you say team, but gradually it becomes clear that their support is based not on conviction, but on fear and greed. The people around him act as a shadow entourage. They cover his back, carry out orders, and pay the price. When the blow comes back like a boomerang, their discontent and fear turn into chaos. South Park, like a surgeon, neatly demonstrates the mechanism. An authoritarian model of governance does not break opponents, but destroys those around them. This is an important observation because, in reality, political failures rarely remain local. They turn into a chain reaction that affects institutions, careers, and reputations. Another scene worthy of separate discussion is Trump's meeting with various influential figures, where talk of control over the situation sounds like an empty mantra. Instead of constructive solutions, there is panic and improvisation. The irony of the episode is that a man who publicly entrusts himself with the role of an effective manager demonstrates an extreme lack of strategic thinking on a personal level. South Park masterfully reverses the image. Public rhetoric turns into personal drama. This sloppiness is deliberately highlighted through small but heavy details. Meaningless orders, unsuccessful traps, ridiculous disguises. The audience sees that all the noise is just a cover for the lack of ideas. The humor of the series deserves special attention. It is both cynical and skillfully calculated. The creators do not limit themselves to shocking gags. They're always followed by a layer of meaning. The same soup that was supposed to take Carr out of action is not just a crude joke. It is an example of how small acts of meanness are used in politics, which, seemingly insignificant, corrode the system from within. Soup as a metaphor for dirty tricks, an injection of vomit and public shame, a tool that should make the task easier, but turns into a mirror of moral decay. The public's reactions in the series are also shown in many ways. There are people who applaud, fans who are willing to turn a blind eye to the methods for the sake of the result. There are those who are shocked and disgusted. And there's a third group, skeptics who did not believe in rhetorical promises from the outset, but are forced to watch as empty words turn into a real tragic comedy. South Park emphasizes that manipulating emotions is a key tool of modern populists. When emotions overshadow rationality, society loses its ability to criticize and becomes vulnerable to manipulation. The aesthetics of the episode are no less important. Grotesque visualization is mixed with the flat, almost documentary-like speech of the characters. This contrast enhances the effect. The viewer laughs, and at the same time feels that what they're seeing on the screen is not just a cartoon, but a mirror of the processes taking place. Humor here is a preventive measure. It helps to digest the disturbing, but does not remove the anxiety. On the contrary, laughter becomes a way of realizing the problem. That very symbolic baby is disgusting, but it forces the viewer to look at what in the real world they're trying to sweep under the rug. In addition, the writers subtly insert quotes and references to real incidents. This is not copying, but interpretation. The inserts about Jimmy Kimmel and attempts to pressure the media are an element that translates the absurd into the realm of a specific social conflict. When the series looks real events in the face and reinterprets them with a touch of mockery, it doesn't just entertain, it provokes discussion. In this sense, South Park acts as a platform for social reflection. Through caricature, it forces us to rethink the usual boundaries of what is acceptable in politics. The next important theme is moral responsibility. The episode traces the motif that evading responsibility and accusing those around you of incompetence is a way to avoid personal guilt. Trump in the series is not only a victim of circumstances, although he creates them, but also an active creator of problems. his attempts to shift responsibility onto others, his desire to solve the problem at the cost of someone else's grief. All this reveals the moral vacuum behind public slogans. At the end of this part, one is left with the feeling that the series did not simply ridicule a figure. It showed the process. The process of image building, the process of diffusing responsibility, the process of turning political drama into farce. And if the first block talked about the mechanics and the first blows of satire, here the psychological and social background is revealed. Why people are led astray, what is the price of their choice, and what remains after the laughter. In the next part, I will continue by analyzing the final scenes, the public's reaction to the show, and possible conclusions for real politics, as well as offering my final thoughts on why such satire is important today. The climax comes not in the form of a single explosive moment, but as a series of escalating failures, a chain of minor provocations that add up to a major catastrophe for the main character and those around him. At first, it seems like comical clumsiness, some kind of botched trap, a ridiculous attempt to cover up traces, another meaningless threat. But gradually, the viewer realizes that this is not a coincidence, but a systemic feature of the image of power shown in the episode. And then laughter gives way to a sense of anxiety. These are not just jokes, but alarming signs of the collapse of institutions. The final scenes are built on contrast. In one corner, there are Trump's futile attempts to control the situation. In the other, there is the confusion of his accomplices, who pretend that everything is under control. Humor remains a tool of analysis. The direction and editing push the viewer to the uncomfortable conclusion that all power is a fragile puppet, and pulling its strings can cause unpredictable consequences. This is especially evident in episodes where the characters try to play to the audience. Outward calm gives way to panic, and rehearsals of the image of power turn into pantomime. The scenes where ordinary people react to what is happening are particularly powerful. Instead of heroic resistance, we see a mixture of apathy, cynicism, and passive approval. Some characters are simply tired of the constant information noise and choose the comfort of security, turning a blind eye to the obvious. Others, on the contrary, are overwhelmed by the desire not to notice the obvious in order to preserve their own interests. South Park makes the viewer feel how easy it is to turn political activism into a display of maintaining status. And this is one of the main themes of the series: mass stupidity and habituation to the oddities of power. The musical accompaniment and sound design at the climax serve as additional glue. The serious, sometimes parodic music reinforces the feeling of surrealism, as if the events are taking place in another dimension, where morality has been undermined and common sense seems to be on sale. The rhythm of the editing accelerates at the right moment, creating the effect of an impending collapse. The sounds break up, mixing with screams and laughter, and in the end, the viewer is left with the bitter aftertaste of realizing that they have witnessed something truly destructive. There are also subtle metaphors that make it clear that the problem runs deeper than situational conflicts. For example, there's a scene in the series where television footage and Twitter feeds overlap, creating an indistinguishable mixture of fact and fiction. This is a clear reference to how modern media creates an ecosystem where the truth is lost. South Park shows that in such an environment, any scandal can easily turn into a singing marathon, where meaning is lost in rhymes and repetitions. Another important motivational nuance is moral choice. In one of the key moments, the characters are faced with a choice: to preserve their careers and status, or to admit their mistakes and try to rectify the situation. The answer is easy for most. They choose comfort and self-justification. And this is painful because the series reminds us that this is precisely the level at which most political disasters originate, when people turn a blind eye to evil for the sake of convenience. Finally, analyzing the audience's reaction to the series gives us reason to reflect on general cultural fatigue. Applause and shouts of support are intertwined with sighs of irritation. Society appears fragmented, and the show's sarcasm acts as a call to renew critical thinking. South Park does not offer ready-made answers. It prompts questions. And this is perhaps one of the most important functions of satire, to get the public to start a dialogue, rather than accept ready-made truths. I also want to emphasize the impact of such episodes on public discourse. They don't just create memes and clips on social media. They shape a narrative that can change perceptions of political figures. When millions of people see a caricatured but memorable image of a leader, it changes the emotional background of conversations about them. And sometimes these changes put pressure on real institutions. Satire acts as an accelerator. It condenses a multitude of facts and absurdities into a single image that is easier to discuss and analyze. Such an image can act as a safety valve. Laughter helps people relieve tension, but it can also serve as an indicator of deeper problems that require political response and institutional self-cleansing. Humor can become a catalyst for social responsibility if it is heard by those who can really influence the situation.